Good morning. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Briana Marbury, and I am the president and CEO of the Interledger Foundation. And my esteemed guests, who are going to introduce themselves in a moment, are here to talk about the crucial role education plays in financial inclusion efforts. But before we do that, I want to play a quick video about the Interledger Foundation first.
In our modern world, technology moves at light speed. But why does our financial infrastructure fail to keep up with the pace of change? The Interledger protocol was created to make sending money across the internet easy. We envisioned a payments network that acts as a bridge between anyone in the entire world. Today, when we send an email, we take it for granted that once we hit send, the email will appear in the recipient's inbox almost instantly. It doesn't matter if you're sending from one email provider to another. It works seamlessly in a matter of seconds, not days. The Interledger protocol is designed so you can send money as easily as you can send an email. It's a network that reflects our interconnected world, accessible to all, regardless of identity, geography, or income. One that's more inclusive, without minimum transaction amounts or costly transfer fees. The closed networks of the past keep people disconnected. Our mission is to bring our financial infrastructure into the 21st century and give everyone equal access to a global financial network. Email your digital bank or digital wallet provider and ask them to consider joining us to help make the world a more interconnected place. Visit interledger.org/today to learn more.
As the video stated, our goal is to make sending payments as easy as sending an email, with the goal of bringing some of the world's most vulnerable populations access to digital financial services. And one of the ways that we do that is partnering with organizations that we have today as our grantees to try to bring that vision into reality. So with that, let me introduce Ni, or let him introduce himself.
Thank you so much, Briana. My name is Ni. I'm CEO of ThisWorks. Very quickly, ThisWorks is a financial technology company with a focus on financial inclusion. We work with financial institutions to power them with the digital tools, right, to improve financial inclusion in the areas that they work. I also like to share a short video on a project that we are working with the support from the Interledger Foundation. Could you place that video, please? Thank you.
In the heart of Myanmar, where rich traditions meet modern aspirations, lies a challenge that holds back countless individuals from realizing their full potential: financial exclusion. But now, transformative solution is on the horizon. Welcome to Thitsanet, an inclusive payment network dedicated to empowering the unbanked and underbanked in Myanmar. At ThisWorks, we believe that financial inclusion is the key to unlocking economic equality and prosperity. Led by a team of experienced study professionals with over 30 years of international expertise, we have a passion for leveraging technology to drive positive change. With a global presence spanning the United States, Australia, Thailand, Singapore, and Malaysia, we have a proven track record of success. Thitsanet is not just another digital payment network. It is a lifeline for millions, providing seamless access to financial services that were once out of reach. Our network is built upon the Interledger protocol and modular technologies, revolutionizing the way transactions are conducted in Myanmar. Meet Kine, a hardworking farmer from a rural village. For years, Kine struggled to access basic financial services and had limited opportunities to grow her business. But with Thitsanet, Kine can receive cross-border remittances, access loans, and make repayments through her mobile wallet or local bank. Bits.net will transform her life, enabling her to expand her farm and secure a brighter future for her family. Join us on this journey towards financial inclusion. Contact us at info@bitsaworks.com to be a part of the Bits.net revolution.
Thank you, Ni, for sharing that. And now we'll let Isabel and Roberto introduce themselves and their video.
Hola, buenos días. Mi nombre es Isabel Cruz.
Good morning. My name is Isabel Cruz.
Soy antropóloga.
I'm an anthropologist.
Trabajo en zonas rurales hace 40 años.
I work in rural areas for the last 40 years.
Y mi principal objetivo ha sido construir un sistema financiero incluyente.
My main objective has been to build an inclusive financial system
para medios rurales.
For rural areas.
Que sea un sistema autónomo basado en el ahorro.
Which would be autonomous based on savings.
Y con respuestas puntuales para territorios campesinos e indígenas.
And punctual answers for farmers and people in rural areas.
Actualmente trabajamos en un proyecto de inclusivo para tecnologías digitales que nos permita llevar a comunidades rurales medios de pago como principal mecanismo de intercambio con el exterior.
We currently work in a digital inclusion program through a digital technological platform, that allows us to bring a new means of payment to rural microbanks and rural communities.
Trabajamos en mundos completamente distintos a las zonas urbanas, en donde no existen esos tiempos reales de los que de los que hablamos en la introducción.
We work in areas where different times exist than urban regions, right? So less timely and instant.
Pero lo más importante es que estamos en ese sector estratégico para el futuro de la humanidad, que es zonas rurales de biodiversidad y de retención de carbono.
But the most important is that we are in those regions that will be essential for the future of humanity with respect to climate change, carbon, what's the word, conservation, let's say, and a just world in the sense of including those who have been excluded.
Roberto.
Hello, and I am Roberto Valdovinos. Maybe Isabel forgot to mention, she's not only that, but she's also the CEO of AMUX, which is the Mexican Association of Social Sector Credit Unions, right? Which sort of owns or co-manages and directs a network of 140 community banks around Mexico. And I am the CFO of the People's Clearinghouse, one of those projects that are under the guise of, under the lead of AMUX, right? In which we're building financial inclusion by using new open source technologies that allow these community banks to be connected, and especially the people who have their accounts at those community banks connected among them and with international networks in easier, cheaper, and more inclusive ways. Thank you, Briana. I don't know if we can show the video.
Yes. Yes, and now can we please show the video for People's Clearinghouse?
The community you see here, like many indigenous communities of Mexico, is a massive remittance recipient. These remittances, however, are only disbursed in cash at payout locations. Even community banks, when available, can only pay cash remittances because they remain isolated from financial networks. Why is that a problem? Well, injecting millions of dollars in cash remittances that are not backed up by any local economic growth will provoke dependency. Why work when you receive threefold in remittances? Inflation. Things get more expensive. And inequality. If you don't receive remittances, good luck to you. That's why, paradoxically, communities receiving remittances tend to die out. Yet, this massive cash flow could have fostered local development had people receive it in their community bank accounts. Because then the community bank will have more liquidity to lend and invest in sustainable projects. So instead of dependency, remittances could promote local work. Instead of inequality, community banks could lend to all noteworthy projects, not only those from remittances recipients. And while inflation will still be there, its effects will be tempered by local development. However, as we said, these community banks are isolated. How can they receive money from abroad directly into their clients' accounts? That's where People Clearinghouse comes in. How? By connecting community banks to payment systems using innovative, open-source technology not commonly seen in rural areas. The People's Clearinghouse uses the Interledger protocol to set the terms of each transfer and to execute them, so that clients of participating institutions can send and receive money in a preset network. By having a platform with a central ledger connecting all participants, People's Clearinghouse serves as an intermediary for transfers between clients of participating institutions. Community banks will not be isolated anymore. Now, the biggest challenge is remittances. Here's how we do it. We'll use Rafiki, a software that facilitates interledger protocol transfer for financial institutions to create a channel for interledger protocol transfers initiated in the United States towards community banks' clients in Mexico. And instead of community banks implementing Rafiki one by one, we will use our licensed money transmitter as a bridge between Rafiki and People's Clearinghouse so that all community banks participating can access international remittances through a single gateway. The settlement process will be carried out using Fed Global, a public solution developed by the Fed and the Central Bank of Mexico. Behind all this, there's the Mexican Association of Social Sector Credit Unions, AMUCS, and its 30-year-old endeavor for real financial inclusion. AMUCS leads a network of 140 community banks in all of Mexico, covering 34 indigenous languages, and with 60% of its network's final clients being women from marginalized regions. With the support of the Interledger Foundation, and by means of the Interledger protocol, People's Clearinghouse will be actively changing the future of many communities before the end of 2024.
Thank you so much for sharing your video as well. I think it adds a layer of depth to the work when you actually see the impact that it will make on the ground. You went into some of the details about the mechanics of how the remittances would work, but I would like to take a step way back and talk about what is digital financial inclusion and how does that relate to financial inclusion as a whole? I feel sometimes we have a tendency to talk about the two as if they're separate, but they are related. So, Isabel, can you tell us what does digital financial inclusion mean to you and how is it related to financial inclusion as a whole? And then followed by me.
Adelante.
Bueno, la inclusión financiera digital es un fenómeno urbano.
Digital financial inclusion is an urban phenomenon.
Y ha estado enfocada al uso de tarjetas y celulares.
And it has been focused in the use of cards and phones.
Y ha masificado estos servicios entre una población con acceso a computadoras, celulares e internet.
Massifying this use among people who have access to phones and internet and computers.
Pero su efecto en la inclusión financiera en conjunto todavía es limitado, porque
but its effect on actual financial inclusion is still limited.
En México tenemos un fenómeno muy grande de creación de empresas fintech usando inclusión financiera digital.
In Mexico, we have, for instance, the new fintech companies arriving and bringing digital financial methods, but not necessarily financial inclusion solutions.
Y es un fenómeno de América Latina.
And that's a phenomenon of all of Latin America.
Que sin embargo no ha tocado la ampliación de inclusión financiera. Porque la inclusión financiera basada en ahorros y en préstamos, en acceso a seguros o a medios de pago, es muy limitada en zonas rurales en particular.
And here the deep down question is how to relate this digital inclusion, which is massive in urban areas and in rural areas. I'm just adding a little bit to the context, into the fact that we need more effective loans, lending, investing methods at the local level. The connection between the two is the problem.
Y no ha llegado a zonas rurales básicamente porque las zonas rurales de México y en general de América Latina tienen una exclusión digital masiva.
And mainly that's because in rural areas, there's a digital divide that remains there, which hasn't allowed people to interact with these new methods of financial inclusion.
Y el acceso a inclusión digital cuando existe es de muy mala calidad.
And many times digital access, digital financial access, let's call it that way, is of bad quality, mainly because of infrastructure problems in rural regions. That's a main comment. Yeah.
Thank you. And Nee?
Thank you, Briana. So digital financial inclusion in our definition is for people to be able to use digital financial services and tools to access to finance and access to other financial tools, right? So that they are financially included in the formal financial systems. What I see digital financial inclusion is that it may be the only way for some of the emerging countries, right, that has been trying to achieve financial inclusion. Right? I think we can look at some examples like India and Brazil. In India, for example, they just start the financial inclusion, right? And I think they cut down like so many years of their financial inclusion journey by using digital financial services and tools. I think that's the very practical the example of how some countries, like where we are trying to achieve financial inclusion, can use digital financial inclusion as a tool to get to that goal much faster.
Thank you for those answers. I think it's really important to kind of level set and when you're having a conversation like this, because there's so many different interpretations of what financial inclusion are and digital financial inclusion. And that's true whether you're talking to people that are looking at this live stream or after we record, who are deeply immersed in this work, or for a general audience. So speaking of general audiences, how would you try to translate what you're trying to accomplish with the general public who may not be familiar with these concepts, much less any of the terms we're using? What do education efforts look like in your respective locales? Where do you start, Nee?
I can go back to the video that we just showed. In that video, we used an example of a lady who I actually met in Boston. I met her at the one of the financial literacy workshop that we provided. So I think for her to be able to take advantage of the digital financial services and tools that are available, she would need to be trained, and she would need to know how to use those tools effectively, safely, so that she can really take advantage of this. What I see as one of the challenges or one of the concerns that could arise by introducing digital financial services and tools is that if people who are not familiar with these tools are using them, it could actually harm them. So I think that's where the education piece comes in, to make sure that as these digital financial services are provided and introduced to communities, right, we also need to make efforts to make sure that the people who will be using it, for some of them, for the first time in their life, right, that they can do it safely. So I think if they go hand in hand, and I think there are so many different channels of providing this kind of education and knowledge, and we can talk about some examples of how we've been doing it.
Thank you. And Isabel, how do you begin to reach and educate those in the communities that you're serving?
Ya. Bueno, primero hay que decir que la educación digital está más avanzada que la educación financiera.
First, we must say that digital financial education or literacy is more advanced than financial literacy itself.
Y creo que yo empezaría educando a las instituciones, no a los clientes.
And I would start by educating the institutions, not the clients.
Porque hay que entender a los clientes para saber qué necesitan, cuáles son los servicios financieros que se adaptan a sus necesidades.
Because they need to understand in a local context what the clients want and how to adapt those necessities.
He visto 15 años de educación, del movimiento internacional de educación financiera y particularmente en México, con procesos muy rígidos que vienen desde arriba y desde fuera del mundo de los pobres.
I've seen for the last 15 years a global movement for financial inclusion that tries to impose a single method to every community, every region, every country, as if it worked in the same way and do not adapt to local circumstances.
Y queremos educar como si fuera un mundo urbano. ¿Cuáles son sus ingresos? ¿Cuáles son sus egresos? ¿Qué margen de ahorro tienen? ¿Cómo usar un seguro?
Okay, and we want to educate those in rural areas as if we were in just any city, in any place of the world, making an analysis on what's their income, what's their spending, what's their saving margin, right? And how what is the insurance that would be good for them.
Y eso es parte del mundo urbano. Así no funciona la economía y el uso del dinero en las zonas rurales y campesinas.
But in many cases, the way that would work for urban societies, specifically developed societies, would not be the same in rural areas where they have a very different use of money and a use of saving related to their own activities. Déjame concluir ahí. To give an example, I'm sorry, now I'm speaking myself, Roberto. The farmers, right? They are paid not not two times a month like a normal employee, right? They are paid at the end of the period in which they are cultivating, they are growing whatever they're doing, corn or wheat or whatever. So coffee. In our case, it's mainly coffee, cacao, right? Or honey. So the honey is different, the timeline. But that means that they will be paid at the end of 3 months, 6 months. So whatever activity we're thinking, should be thinking that they are going to receive their income in a period of 3 to 6 months. And thus the products and the management that we're going to teach to them in terms of financial literacy has to be adapted to that reality. And unfortunately, it has not always been the case.
Y lo que vemos es que las necesidades de dinero cambian mucho de un hogar rural a un hogar urbano, e incluso dentro de lo rural hay necesidades muy diversas. Y creo que las instituciones deben aprender de sus clientes para adaptar sus servicios financieros.
And just to conclude, says Isabel, that difference is not only between urban and rural regions, it's also between rural regions themselves, different regions. And so the key idea here is that before we go and teach users, the institutions involved, the financial institutions involved, should learn from them. Yeah.
Yes.
Thanks. Thank
you, Roberto. You brought up something that I didn't know about. I didn't know that there are some farmers who get paid at the end of a season. Is there any efforts to change that? How do the farmers adapt to that?
I didn't understand it as a question. Sorry, Briana.
So are there any efforts to get the farmers paid before, like workers who are on the farm? Are there efforts to get them paid before the end of the season, like after 2 weeks or a month, so that they wouldn't have to go such long stretches without an income?
Ya. Bueno, justamente eso habla de cómo combinar el uso de servicios financieros.
That precisely speaks of how to combine financial services.
Porque en el periodo que no tienen ingreso necesitan crédito.
Because in the period they do not have income, they need credits.
Y ellos pueden pagar en ciertos momentos del año que tienen recepción de ingresos.
And they'll be able to pay back in the moments in which they have the income coming, right? 3-6 months later.
Entonces, pero durante el año también pueden tener recepción de remesas.
But also during the year, they might have remittances coming in.
O ayudas sociales.
Or social benefits in some cases.
Y a veces ellos hacen otras actividades económicas durante el año para procurar ingreso.
And they also do alternative activities, right? To complete the income daily or the monthly income.
Entonces, esto hace que las unidades de producción rurales tengan una economía compleja.
So that makes these unities, right, of growth and productivity, they have a very complex economic structure.
Con momentos de ingreso y de egreso, pero que no siempre permiten pagar un préstamo.
With disconnected moments of income and expenditure, right, and spending, so that they are not always able to pay a credit in the framework that we're used to thinking. To give an example, banks, right? Any commercial bank would say, yeah, minimum lending time, 12 months, right? Yeah. It's normal, it's reasonable. But nobody needs a 12 months credit in these areas, right? It will be 6 months or 8 months, depends what they are growing. So that's a funny situation in which there is not a connection between the two worlds, right?
Entonces, eso es lo que tenemos que aprender.
That's what we have to learn.
Cómo funciona el dinero en las familias pobres.
Locally with poor families.
Thank you. So that is one challenge that we see. Another one, Isabel, that you brought up was the access to internet. Besides education, access, what we've already pinpointed, what are some of the other obstacles and barriers that you have encountered in doing this work? Nee, can you shed some light?
Sure. But before I respond to that, one, Isabel explained about the experience in Mexico. It's very, very similar to what we also saw and experienced in Myanmar as well. I think it shows to prove that there are a lot of our commonalities in the countries where we are trying to improve financial inclusion. One of them is, as Isabel said, a lot of our financial institution partners have requested to train their staff with the financial and digital financial literacy programs that we have developed. So we have train-the-trainer programs where we train the staff of the microfinance institutions, and they then train their clients. I think it's much more effective that way, instead of external people coming in and training those clients. The loan officers training their clients is really an effective way of creating a context that is useful, and we see that quite a lot. There are also a lot of similarities with the different type of financial products that farmers need because of their crop. Their income is not regular, and based on that, there should be different types of financial products that are created for them, and they should be informed of those choices so that they can make them appropriately. I think one of the challenges that we saw is having enough information, right, to make a decision on what is the appropriate financial product, for these users. Right? Some of those users are coming online for the first time, right? Whether we like it or not, right? The world is turning digital, even in the most remote areas, even in the most emerging countries. There's no way to escape digital economy. Things are becoming more and more digital. A lot of financial institutions are providing digital financial services. So making a decision on what is the appropriate the product is one of the challenges that we want to make sure that people have access to. I think if we go beyond digital financial literacy, I think the next step that we need to think is access to information. I think that is as equally important as the literacy. Sometimes we can only provide how to do something, but we also need to tell them where they are available and what options are available so that they can make the informed decision. So, the access to information is, I think, one of the challenges. Access to connectivity is challenges in many places still, but I think it is being overcome because of there's a mobile penetration and internet connectivity penetration that is taking over the world. So I think that is one problem that is becoming being solved, but access to information remains a challenge for many of those users.
And I remember you talking about another obstacle that was really interesting as far as like KYC or know your customer. Can you share more about that?
Oh yeah, this is very common in Myanmar, and I think it's also relevant for many countries where some of the families can afford only one smartphone, right? So because of that, the one phone number is shared among the family members. So different family members may be using the same phone to transact, right, on that phone by receiving money or sending money, right? So right there, the KYC becomes a challenge. And sometimes, right, what we see in our country, and it's also relevant in many countries like ours, is that one SIM card is not linked to one mobile wallet, right? Because the mobile wallets or the mobile financial services in our countries are not always provided by telcos, right? So some are independent financial service providers that are providing mobile wallet services. So what it means is that a user can use one mobile phone to open multiple wallet accounts. So if you are if you combine, right, these two issues, right, one phone that has multiple wallets that are being used by multiple people in the family, then the KYC becomes a challenge, especially when we are talking about remittance, when we are talking about transacting with the people that you do not know, that do not know you. Right? So I think that's the challenge that we always have to include in our digital literacy, financial literacy, the content and curriculum, so that we know how to help people address that.
Thank you. Isabel, would you like to add to the barriers the other barriers that you see?
Bueno, primero yo creo que es importante mencionar que el fenómeno más fuerte es que se han masificado el uso del celular. Aún en regiones donde no hay internet, la gente tiene celular para cuando viajan hasta las ciudades más cercanas donde pueden comunicarse.
Okay. So first of all, I think the first thing to say is that in spite of having infrastructure problems like not having internet, everyone in Mexico has a phone, and they use it for individual phones for when they're moving to cities. So it's a different case from Myanmar in this sense. And I would add the case of remittances. Since people receive remittances and they have very large families in the US and more, the best way to communicate is WhatsApp. So they tend to give phones to their families, right? Migrant that goes abroad, migrant that buys right away a phone to each member of the family so they can be communicated. So that's a different circumstance.
Y entonces el tema no es la educación digital, sino la educación financiera. Y como dije antes, la barrera más importante para avanzar en la inclusión financiera digital es la infraestructura de Internet. No tenemos señal de celular en zonas rurales, y cuando ha llegado, porque hay un gran esfuerzo por hacer llegar con el mercado.
So here the thing that happens is that digital financial inclusion, although it's extremely important, it sort of goes by itself at a minimal level because everyone is using a phone. They very quickly know how to use an app as long as the app is transparent, etc. But the financial inclusion question is not solved. And what's behind it, and it goes directly to digital financial inclusion and financial inclusion, is the missing infrastructure. In many regions, there is no internet, there is no way to connect people. In some cases, extreme cases, there is no electricity, but let's leave that aside because it's less and less locally. So that really changes the relation of people to these products.
Y la segunda barrera que es más importante quizá que el Internet es que no hay instituciones financieras. En la cantidad de instituciones, de sucursales en zonas bancarias es muy reducido. Muchos municipios y la mayoría de localidades no tienen una sucursal o un punto de acceso. Y justo...
And the second barrier here, that's also very important, apart from infrastructure, is the fact that there are not many financial institutions present in many regions, or there's one for a big municipality involving hundreds of thousands or millions of people in some cases. That's a problem. Now, I'm adding just a comment here, because although we think that digital financial services can be autonomous, right? And they can, of course, we need first to have a physical approach, an approach in person with people that we want to get involved with these sorts of products, especially in rural areas. So either we send monitors, or Isabel had spoken at another moment of corresponsalías, which are like, how would you say that in English? Correspondents, maybe, who relay certain services. So, and that's important because that builds trust, right? So you cannot simply impose a new app on a community that is not used to these sorts of products. You need a physical presence. And given that financial institutions are not present everywhere, that complicates our task massively, in fact.
Entonces, la gran barrera de falta de instituciones financieras y muy baja penetración de Internet, podemos ayudar con tecnología que permita con anchos de banda reducidos el funcionamiento de terminales punto de venta que nos permitan crear sucursales virtuales y sucursales manejando algunos servicios financieros.
So just to conclude, solo para cerrar, what Isabel is saying is that perhaps one thing that would be useful with respect to these two barriers, right? The infrastructure barrier and the missing, let's say, financial infrastructure barrier, right? Would be to think of new technologies, open source technologies, which are low cost and easy to implement so that we can have sorts of virtual terminals or virtual spaces so that we can do visits. Ideally, that would be as we do normally in AMUCs, and we go around the country visiting leaders of communities and set who would be the point person so that a product can be digitally brought to the community. Sorry for the long answer.
No, that's good, because that was a kind of a perfect segue into my next question, which had to do with trust. You know, people have to be able to trust what they're using. When you're talking about money, and already people don't have a lot of money, how does trust and adoption go hand in hand? And are there ways that technology that people are used to using be used to increase adoption? I'll leave that. Nee or Isabel can take that one.
Nee, you want to go forward?
Bueno, confianza es la palabra clave.
Trust is a key word.
En el sistema financiero.
In a financial system.
Y la confianza, sobre todo, tiene un impacto en el ahorro.
And trust has an impact in how people save.
Y es un proceso que se construye lento y en el plazo.
And that's a process that is built slowly and step by step.
Pero De repente hay saltos cualitativos.
But suddenly there are qualitative jumps.
Y en nuestra experiencia, las instituciones de proximidad, de base comunitaria, los bancos comunitarios, al principio.
So in our experience, proximity institutions like community banks present there with people from the community are important because
al principio el ahorro de las personas es pequeño y siempre ahorro disponible, abierto, disponible todo el tiempo.
In the beginning, people savings is very small and just a little bit, right? And always it has to be available. It cannot be long-term saving.
Pero hay un momento en que ese ahorro pasa a ser un ahorro con depósitos a plazo de mayor tiempo y que le dan más posibilidad a la institución de usar el dinero.
But when there's trust, after some time, very quickly people start using services like savings with an investment program of 3 months, 6 months, where they have to leave the money, right, at the institution.
Cuando haces ahorro e introduces mecanismos digitales, el ahorro, la confianza aumenta sustancialmente.
And then something happens. When you do savings in this way and you add technological products, trust grows like massively from one day to the next one.
Para las instituciones que hacen crédito es lo contrario.
For credit institutions, it's the opposite.
Porque quien confía es la institución al dar préstamo.
Because it's the institution that has to trust the clients in order to lend.
Es muy distinto.
It's a very different mechanism.
Y hay que ver la tecnología en esas dos áreas de los servicios financieros.
And we got to see technology with respect to these two positions and flows.
Pero el tercero, que hoy en día es el más importante,
but the third and most important flow,
porque es el masivo,
because it's a massive one,
es el acceso a medios de pago.
Is the access to payment methods.
Porque
payment means,
todas las familias tienen necesidad de enviar o recibir dinero.
Because all families have the necessity of sending or receiving money.
Entonces, las mejores instituciones ubicadas para entrar en ese terreno son las instituciones que hacen ahorro.
So the best institutions to be an intermediary in that process are those who do savings locally in order to send and receive. I'll just add one point because it wasn't clear. Isabel mentioned that when technology is involved, there's suddenly a leap forward, right, in terms of adoption. Let me just develop that very quickly. Discussing some days ago with Isabel, she insisted on the fact that most of the clients coming to the community banks, they go there not to do a transaction, but to know what their balance is, right? That's like the main public is going to know how much they have in their account. So when suddenly through technology, they have access to an app which says the balance, how much spending they're doing, and also even how much credit they have already returned, right? They have paid back. What happens very quickly is that people see and trust the service because they can relate right away to what they're doing. They see the impact of their financial actions directly in their phones. So that's a very simple thing, but it has a massive impact in trust. But that's, of course, the third level of trust, right? Just to remember, first level is simply saving a little bit. Second is more complex ways of saving that block the money availability. And third step would be technology. Technology, yeah.
Nee, would you like to add anything to that? Yeah.
I think it's really inspiring to hear, right, all these experiences from different area, right, that is also very much relevant to what we have seen too. We are a technology company in the Southwark, so we do not deal with the clients directly, and we do not hold their funds. So a lot of the experience that is shared are the areas where our partners, our clients, the financial institutions who are doing that. Right? So what we want to do is to help them do those things better and more efficient. So we are looking at the digital transformation projects, digital journeys, right, that these financial institutions want to take so that they can improve the relationship with their clients. Right? I think trust is a very important ingredient in that, and there are different ways of gaining that. And Roberto mentioned one simple example of having access to their balance information, and that increased confidence in the system, and also ability to perhaps also withdraw when they need it, right, as they need it. And for some of the institutions that we work with, it's not that they do not want to provide these services or information. It's just that it's very costly, very, very, very manpower intensive to provide that without technology. Right? So where we come in is to introduce any type of the digital tools that are available, digital services that are available, that will help the loan officers, that will help the employees of the finance institution so that they can improve their clients' relationship.
Nee, one thing that you mentioned earlier is that the introduction of these new tools bring risk and danger. In what ways can we safely provide these tools and access to digital financial services while protecting the users?
It's a balancing act. On one hand, we would love to see everyone using digital financial services and tools. Right? We also shared another experience as in Mexico, where 70% of the people, the population in Myanmar lives in rural area. Most of those areas are hard to access, and not every village or township has a financial institution or the branches right in those locations. So the only way for them to access financial services is by using digital tools. So we want to increase the outreach of all the digital financial services and tools to areas where there are no other ways to access finance. Right? So that's one thing. But at the same time, it's not just in Myanmar, but I think it's a general phenomenon that we see where in countries where there's a increased adoption of digital financial services and tools, there's also increase in digital crime. I think we need to accept that. How do we prevent that? I think by training the employees of the financial institutions who are dealing with the clients in sharing their knowledge, letting them know how dangerous to give away your password to your phone, to a stranger, or to somebody to do financial transactions on your behalf, right? Without you understanding what it is, I think it creates so much risk. So I think the only way to tackle that is to have very similar campaigns like public health campaigns, right, where we have to alert people, raise their awareness, the dangers of these tools, and also the value that they see, the numbers, the digits that they see on their phones are actually their money, right? It's a concept that is taken for granted for some of us, right? But actually it's an alien notion for many, many people still, right? They are seeing digits on their phone, and sometimes it's not even in their native language. But to understand that that is their money, just like the money in their wallet, right? It's a concept that needs to be accustomed to, right? So I think that the only way to tackle this is to have campaigns. Make sure that people understand the danger of it, and do more of the things that we do in providing digital financial literacy and the training to the population.
Yes, indeed. Isabel, do you have anything you would like to add to that?
¿Seguridad?
Sí, creo
Yes.
que el tema de la seguridad pasa por el diseño de la tecnología, por la creación de sistemas de ciberseguridad, por las reglas que impone el Banco Central y la Superintendencia de Bancos.
Well, I think that the questions of risks and related to the usage, right, of digital services come hand in hand with the design of the technology, of course, but also with the local behaviors or ways of behaving that are usual. Like in communities, people tend to lend their phone to whoever, right? To give an example. But also, Isabel says the regulation and how the central bank, in our case, or the national commission in charge of these issues, how they relate to this problem.
Pero los mayores riesgos que hemos visto
So the
son
largest risks we've seen
de tipo cultural,
are of cultural sorts,
que los colaboradores respeten las reglas
where collaborators must respect the rules
y se acostumbren a que hay usuarios individuales y no se comparten claves.
and get used to the fact that there are individual users and their keys and passwords should never be shared among them.
Lo que significa educación tecnológica y de seguridad interna en la institución.
Which means that the institution has to have a deep through formation or training on these issues before we come with the actual community.
Y también creo que del lado de los clientes,
and on the side of the users,
es muy importante tener servicios financieros sencillos,
it's very important to have simple financial services
con acceso lógico,
with logical access,
pero sobre todo con fuerte utilidad.
but mainly that are very useful to their means, so they see their value and they protect the access to these services. Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
I will ask one last question of you both before we open up the floor to questions from the audience. In what ways have you seen the needle move forward towards progress since you've started this work? And Isabel, we'll start with you.
Please. ¿Cómo ha progresado esto?
¿Nosotros?
Sí.
Bueno, ha habido un progreso. Al principio hubo progresos lentos.
In the beginning, progress was slow.
Pero en los últimos años hay dos fenómenos que han acelerado la necesidad de servicios financieros digitales.
But with the years, and particularly in the last years, there are two phenomena which have grown massively the use of the services.
Primero fue la pandemia.
One is the pandemic.
Que provocó la entrada de muchos servicios de Internet de baja calidad, pero buscando el espectro de microondas y de satelital.
Which provoked the entrance of many technological financial products, digital financial products, but related in many cases to satellite technology or there's another sort of low bandwidth technology using antennas in many areas, right? Yeah.
Y la necesidad de educación para los hijos usando el celular dejó una cultura masiva de utilidad del celular.
And the fact that many children started having cell phones, they were then educating their parents on the use of digital products, and that made everything grow.
Y el otro fenómeno importante que va a empujar a la digitalización.
The other phenomenon that has brought digitalization massively.
Son las transferencias sociales que se masificaron en México.
Social transfers that were massified in this government.
Por lo menos 12 millones de familias mexicanas reciben una vez al mes o cada 2 meses o una vez al año subsidios para jubilaciones o para transferencias monetarias.
So at least 12 million families currently receive dispersed transfers for social benefits, either for old people, for students, for handicapped communities, people, sorry.
Más las remesas que son
plus remittances.
Entre transferencias sociales y remesas estamos hablando de más de 250 millones de transferencias.
So altogether it's more than 250 million transfers.
Y no hay instituciones financieras. Entonces,
and there's no financial institutions in many cases.
Al principio participaron los bancos comerciales.
So in the beginning, there were the commercial banks doing this.
Hoy cada día se ha alejado un poco más el gobierno de bancos comerciales porque hubo muchos abusos.
Because of the abuse in previous governments, this is a political message.
Pero
the divide, there has been a divide between commercial banks, like national commercial banks, and the government disbursing these social benefits.
Pero lo que importa para nuestra tarea, que es inclusión financiera
The important
digital,
point here for digital financial inclusion
es que eso ha creado conocimientos y cultura general respecto a la utilidad que tiene usar servicios digitales.
This has massively brought knowledge, awareness of the importance of digital products as a solution, and thus the impact that we're receiving in AMUCS and in general in Mexico with respect to the necessity of digital accounts, of digital tools that are useful for financial inclusion, financial products in general.
Entonces, ahora falta tener internet e instituciones.
Yeah, so the infrastructure is missing some points, but we're in a good path. Thank you, Briana.
Thank you. And Nee, I'm not sure that we'll have a lot of time for the questions that we have, but Nee, how about you? How have you seen the needle move forward?
I think it is moving forward just because there's no other way. I think in many communities, in many countries, especially during COVID time, we saw that was the only way to send money or receive money. So I think the COVID jumpstart a lot of those digital transformation journeys for countries. I think we saw that in firsthand. So that was one good example of something that positive that came out of a very, very unfortunate era. I will just give one example of a personal story. My grandmother, she passed away now. She passed away at the end of 2020. Before she passed away, and that was during COVID time, she asked me to download a mobile wallet on her phone so that she can send her monthly donations to an orphanage that she sends. Normally, somebody will come and pick up this money from her and she will donate cash. She asked me to teach her how to use this wallet so that she can continue sending this donation. So I think that's one example in one family. I think that happened across many, many families. And I think, that's one of the reasons the leaders move.
Thank you. And I'm sorry we won't have, we had such an engaging and enriching conversation that we don't have time for audience questions, but how can people find you if they want to follow up? Isabel and Roberto?
Yeah, so please look at AMUCS, amucss.org. There's also lacamara.mx for La Cámara. We're updating the website, so it may not be accessible for the following days, but that should be done next week. And our email you can send me an email at rv@lacamara.mx, and we're always available for any questions or people who want to get involved. Thank you.
Thank you. And Nee?
Please find us on LinkedIn, thesaworks.com, right? Those are the two places where you can always find us. Please reach out to us. We would love to share more about these and find ways to collaborate. Thank you.
Thank you. And you can reach the Interledger Foundation at interledger.org or info@interledger.org if you would like to send a message. Thank you thank you all so much for your contributions to this session, and have a great day. Thank you for those tuning in.
Thank you so much, Briana, for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you, Interledger Foundation.
Thank you.